just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? This is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to this Juneteenth Father's Day weekend special. This is part two, where, as we try to do almost every week, we discuss education as it pertains to the nation as a whole, as well as CCSD and us here in Southern Nevada. We're lucky enough to be joined once again. First time in the new studio is Anna Marie Binder, host of CCSD Empowering CCSD Parents is the Facebook group, and her show is Spilling the CCSD Tea, and it can be seen every other Tuesday on Vegas Hype Media. Do I got all that right,
You got all that right.
So tell us what's been going on with you since I haven't seen you in 2 months.
Unfortunately, a lot going on. I've had a family emergency. I have an aunt who's not doing very well. So I've been quiet because I've been dealing with that. So
I don't think you've been quiet.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. I feel like I've been quiet, as quiet as I can be. It's just dealing with a lot of that. So, but obviously, just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm not paying attention and watching what's going on. I did get to attend the work session last week where Trustee Danielle Ford came off her, the podium basically and went down and spoke as a parent, constituent, and whatnot. And then I was very lucky to host her on my show this week.
Right, which I got the chance to see.
And that was a really good conversation that, she needed to have. And I'd like to use my show to give people an outreach
thing,
or,
right.
to, you want to come in and talk, let's talk. So,
one thing I noticed about Danielle Ford is I definitely don't agree with her policy-wise on a lot of things.
A lot of people don't.
But, I mean, she's been nice enough to come down. She's visited Infinity. She said she's going to be a guest on the show one of these days. And one thing I do respect about her is that she's not afraid to defend her position. She's not afraid to speak with people from either side of the aisle. She's very open and transparent. And she's the first to admit, she's relatively new at this and she's trying her best. And again, I have no problem with people on the other side of the aisle when I don't feel like they're evil.
Right.
And that's becoming more and more the case.
Right. As you see that, that like little...
Like the teachers union,
it.
right? I'm getting to the point where I don't know if I'd be able to have a teachers union rep here without being like, why are you so demonic? You know what I mean? Whereas
and I would disagree a little bit with that, just because I've seen them obviously in action, not just in the legislature, but at meetings, and I've been following them because as a parent, I'm not ever trying to just be like, okay, no, this is evil and I don't want to hear anything they have to say. I want to see what they're saying. I want to see what they're fighting for. I'm trying better to understand all of that because I do support teachers and I do support staff and our admin. It's just, I think, like last year when I was really, really upset, I was lashing at teachers' unions, and teachers because I thought they were the main reason that our kids were not in school. And I took that very personally. But then over a little bit of time, I realized that it wasn't them as a whole, and I had to stop attacking it that way. And I have very much apologized, and I have very much tried to reach out and, I'll fight
mend some bridges.
Well, not necessarily mend some bridges because there was some really bad stuff that was going on last summer. But because I want teachers to know that they are valued and, we entrust them with our children. And, I'll fight for anyone if I think the cause is right.
Right.
And again, going back to the word evil, I think there's a lot of other words we could also use that go into that. But a lot of groups and individuals in town don't fight with the transparency, I believe, that I do. There's a lot of game playing.
Well, I find that a lot. I mean, when I reach out to people, they're speaking about all these causes, whether you're talking about the educational field or you're talking about Clark County politics or Nevada politics, and everybody wants to say they're side of the story on, say, a Facebook page where they could just write something and,
done.
post
Right,
and
just-
ghost,
yeah.
right? And then you say, oh, you had a really great point. Why don't you explain it to me? Or the, I'm going to get into this in another segment about, the lawsuit that just passed on the Clark County Republican Party. But then you do the research at the Nevada Independent, or you reach out to the people who were involved in the lawsuit, and you can't get any news or information when people are really thirsty to know what's going on.
Well, I think a lot of that right now is because the media is polarizing off a lot of that the people that are fighting in that lawsuit kind of do want a little bit of privacy as to why they are fighting. The writings in the papers, it's a public docket. You can go in, you can download the documents and read them for yourself. I actually was more interested in the, I think it was Judge Glass, right? In her ruling on that initial motion. But, because there's so many disingenuous people in our community that aren't fighting for the right things, that really, and that's not just a Republican thing.
No,
that's not just a Democratic
everything.
thing. It's people.
Like you were saying with the teachers union. I'm
Right.
starting to be sick of the teachers union, and you're trying to ground me and say, listen, just because, first of all, CCSD doesn't have that national teachers union that I despise the most, we're not even affiliated with them. And like you say, just because they have one policy I don't like, or they have 3 people that represent them on TV, that doesn't mean that the ground floor is full of demonically possessed.
Right. And I think, and for me to say this, I think it says a lot. But as most people know, I have 6 children that have upwards been in 5 different schools across our district at any given time because of their ages and their grades. And I've never had a bad teacher. I mean, and we're talking, if I have 3 high school kids, we have what? 3 times 6.
Right.
That many
That's
for 3
right
kids.
there, right.
For 3 kids. And then you go to junior high, 6 more teachers. And so I haven't, obviously in the elementary level, I think are a little closer to your kid's teacher
Of course,
because it's
all day,
because
every
it's
day,
one.
right.
But then as your children get older and they're exposed to so many more educators, that you don't really get that one-on-one, and not a lot of parents take the time to go to open house or go to back to school night.
I was a teacher, and sometimes I would have a class of 40 kids. I'd have 2, maybe 3 parents show up. And anybody who's new to the Johnny Bruce Show, while I am very unhappy with teachers unions as a whole, I am the biggest proponent for teachers as a whole. There's nobody who's more pro-teacher than me.
Yeah, that's what I just said too. But and if anyone between you and I had a legitimate issue with the teachers union, I would believe it would be you, because you are a former educator. So you know a lot more about the inner workings.
And I've worked with the teachers union closely when I've had things arise at the schools and school levels, and questions that I've asked. And I remember, I don't think when Jara first got his job, he visited all of the schools and all of the teachers, and there was a Q&A, and he didn't realize the Johnny Bruce Show didn't exist then, so he didn't realize that my investigatory, journalistic thing came right up, and I asked him 3 tough questions, and he was like, you could tell that he was ready for
He's like, demote him.
right. Needless to say, a year later, I'm not with CCSD anymore. That's
right,
funny.
But I have a legal background, and I've left jobs for the same reasons sometimes, and that actually was a conversation that came up on social media. Talking about equality in the workplace. And I believe, regardless of anything, if you go to work for any company or corporation and you begin to turn the wheel that they don't want turned, you're going to face retaliation. And, and it doesn't matter if you were only there a month, 6 months, a year. Companies like to operate the way they like to operate. They're private companies. And I think that's regardless of sex, race, religion, anything.
Industry,
right. And I see a lot of people complain about, business problems like that. But I just, companies like to run the way they're going to run, and they don't want anyone else telling them what's a good or a bad policy for them. And I think sometimes people misconstrue a public entity's ability to work with a community and take the input and the criticism versus a private.
Do you want to be better?
Right. Well, right. And you would think that any successful company And a lot of them do it. You know, they do surveys on their employees.
Right,
they
but
bring
there's
them
nothing
in.
like
Look at
fresh-
Zappos. Look at Zappos.
Right.
What a perfect example of community.
And ingenuity and
absolutely
being able to change
And
with their environment.
Absolutely. And if more companies operated like they did, they would be just as
And
successful.
there's nothing like a set of fresh eyes. I mean, last week I talked a lot about having professionals. You know, schools are made up of people primarily who went to high school, went to college, went back to high school. They've never seen, you know, profit and loss reports.
Sure.
They've never seen a human resources director. They've never seen ordering forms and this, that, the other thing. And a lot of these people end up becoming principals. And a school is like a business with 1,000 customers,
Yep.
and you got, you know, 100 employees or 100 teachers and another 100 employees, whether you're talking about secretaries, janitors, and it's a lot of work to do.
And I'm hearing mixed on, you know, the buyouts. You know, we had CCSD bought out a lot of admin and principals, and this probably over the course of the next year or two, we're going to be looking at a lot of people that maybe never even had the ambition or desire to be a principal,
But maybe were pushed into
that
that
are now
position.
getting pushed into it just by virtue of promotion. And I've seen many of them are very much embracing it and wanting to do the right thing, because at the end of the day, you know, our educators, they do want what's best for
the most
the
part, of
students, for
course.
the most part. And, you know, obviously every profession has bad apples. So the genuine concern that I see teachers have, and I guess this is where the union works for some of them, is the fact that, yes, you know, most of our educators have master's degrees. You don't go and get a master's degree to come back to work for $40,000 a year.
Right, 100%. And then
And
they're
why
looking
would-
at the money, and a lot of them, they'll even say, oh, I teach is what I love to do, but I'm maxed out. I'm making 60 grand
They have
maxed
to pay bills.
out.
They have to pay
I
bills.
can make 90 grand if I'm a principal.
Right. They
and
have,
then the Peter
or more.
principal.
Right. And when you know, so honestly, I have issue with higher education just because I don't think that education makes any person who they already are. You know, it diversifies you in topics and subjects, teaches you writing skills and critical thinking and a lot of things, but some of the best lawyers I know went to the crappiest law schools.
Right.
And
And you
some
could
of the
take-
worst lawyers I know went to the best law schools.
Right,
because
and you
it
could
doesn't-
take an entire MIT course online for free.
Sure.
You could learn about chemical engineering.
Right.
You could learn everything there is to know about mathematics.
Because
and
of
you
time-
don't have a degree, though.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So I think that higher ed is a
Scam?
I'm trying to think of.
So I didn't
maybe-
mean to say that. I was thinking out loud.
Well, no. I mean, I wouldn't use the word scam, but I believe it is a system of debt to make you believe that you need these things to achieve great things in life, and you don't. And so, you know, what happens, you know, you're in high school. What happens senior year? I remember when I was a senior, the counselor's office had like a whole hallway, and every kid that was pledged to a college, their picture was up there with the pledge, if they got scholarships.
Did they celebrate the
And-
guy who got an internship at a plumbing company?
Right, no, they don't. And hey, do they celebrate the kid who starts working in the family-owned business and it's a successful business? Or they don't even, you know, they don't celebrate like soldiers.
And you even mentioned something like, you know, somebody is getting a master's degree to make $45,000 as a CCSD teacher. They're in debt $150,000.
Right.
They spend 5 or 6 years of their life getting this master's degree. And if you're a plumber, a good one,
You're
who knows how to wake up every morning and get to work, you're making $80,000.
My brother-in-law is a plumber in California, and he's pushing 6 figures.
Right. You talk about electricians,
Yeah.
plumbers. I mean,
And he
even
never
owning-
went to college. He served in the Navy his 4 years and never went to college. And he makes excellent money.
And college is great for some people. But I really believe that if you're going to go to college, you have to have a plan. You can't just go
Absolutely.
to college, I don't know what I'm going to make. You got to say, I'm going to be a lawyer. I need to do this, that, and the other thing.
If you're looking for, you know, yes, you know, highly licensed professions, doctors, lawyers, nurses, engineers, you know, yes, obviously you absolutely need that. But what no one really teaches youth is that anything you want to be, if it's not kind of one of those, and again, that's a system thing too, because anybody who wanted to be those things technically could, but the way that they do the, you know, I'm a I hate testing. So if you know, you're getting pushed, you know, hold on, from kindergarten or 3rd grade to 12th grade, you're basically taught how to test.
Right.
They want your test scores, You get to college, they want your test scores. You want to go into a profession, you've got to pass that test. Now, most of those have an entry level and then a beyond for licensing, testing, and then, but it's all money. It's all money. And
think about how much money these testing companies are making.
Well,
I mean, it's
I started
stupid.
so last summer when they were at the board meetings, when they kept constantly saying our contractual obligations. I literally was ripping my hair out because I'm like, I don't care about your contractual obligations. I care about our children.
Right.
Why do you keep talking about this? And then finally, at one meeting, it clicked. And I went, oh, yeah, because they do have contracts. And then they said
obligations.
If they don't meet those obligations, they will go bankrupt. Because these testing companies are paying them millions and millions of dollars to test our kids on standardized tests, the ACT, the SAT. So
and it's just like everything else in politics where the money seems to go around in circles and they're constantly, you know, funding each other. And if you're not part of that loop.
Right. And honestly, that's why Trustee Ford always speaks out against the testing. Because primarily teaching kids to test is not education.
And this is one of my problems. I'm not against
and those
testing.
aren't her words, those are mine.
Right.
But
I'm not against testing.
Okay.
I'm against testing the way they do it.
Sure.
I'm not against the teachers having a union. I'm against the teachers union going about things the way they do it. I'm not against, you know, the Clark County Republican Party having certain ways to join their club. I just don't like the certain ways that they're doing it. You know, it's just because you don't like something doesn't mean you don't appreciate the premise or understand welfare. You know, World War II soldiers are dying with taking care of single moms. I mean, that's God bless them, you know, but then it evolves 100 years later into people having a 9th kid because it's going to be an extra $800 a month in their welfare check. All right. As we touched on everything going on around here, what I'm going to do is we have some national stories that relate to us here in Clark County. So I'm going to play a couple clips, and I want to get your feeling, and then also if you could also tie it into what's going on here in Southern Nevada. This first clip is something that we haven't even spoken about, and it's besides CRT and anti-racism stuff, we're starting to have a lot more situations with, say, trans kindergarten reading time, where they bring in a transsexual to read to the kids. And
I thought that was only happening at libraries, at public libraries.
Well, it's happening more in schools. Drag queen reading hour. But nonetheless, now they're trying to. It was already controversial how to talk about sexuality with children. You know, some people say it should be primarily the family's responsibility. School shouldn't be involved in it at all. But then some other proponents for teaching it would say, you know, some kids have a single family and maybe it's a single mom and it's a boy, or it's a single girl and she has a father, or a father or even both parents are working 12 hours a day. They're lucky that they eat dinner together and say goodnight, you know, before they actually get a chance to really engage with each other. And that's an argument for a whole nother story about the culture of our world and having less parents.
We live in a debt system, and they want you to be in debt. You want that American dream? You're going to be in debt. You want that nice car? You're in debt. You want to buy a house? You're in debt.
And if you want to spend 45 minutes talking about child care, pre-K child care provided by the state, we could go on. I mean, we could go off on tangents and so on and so forth. But this specifically is about a mother who was upset because they were trying to take this stuff for 10-year-olds, where they're literally talking about like masturbation and anal and oral sex and like stuff that really I felt
icky even like talking about it.
Well, and you're going to notice from the board meeting that the board got very uncomfortable with it too. And the mother's point is exactly, she's saying, if this makes you uncomfortable, think about how I feel when you're telling a 40-year-old man or woman or whatever to talk about this stuff with my 6-year-old, 7-year-old child. Yeah, why don't we play tape? Let's hear what she has to say.
She came to your school when she procures bids for ISU with construction and came to your school and spoke to your staff for 2 straight days. Why did she do that? This is why she did that. This is why she did that. To make sure that when our students want to know whether or not they have a vagina or a penis, they have pictures from your staff to be able to help them. They don't have enough sex. They don't have enough anal sex. They need adults to tell them how to masturbate. And what I call that is... So here's what I'm asking you. You have a hard time hearing this from me, but this is for 10 years old and up, and this bill was passed for 5-year-olds. And you have a hard time me sitting here telling you the words anal sex, masturbation. That's hard for you, or the time's up? Because the time's not really up. I don't believe you, Mr. Wiley, that my time is up. But I'm going to end with this. I'll close with this because this was too much for you. I can tell right now. And that's why you're cutting me off. But last time I said, you know what? Critical race theory. Little girl in the back was laughing every single time Megan said something because white people oppress black people, right? Isn't your principal black?
Wow.
Isn't your mayor black?
All right, and she hits upon a half dozen little things right there.
Sure.
But I mean, what's your impression when you see this? I mean, this is you. I see you going in to speak
This is
school
me,
board
yeah.
member. This isn't you, but she's like you. And
It's the
last
passion.
week we
It's the
talked.
passion.
We called out about 10 parents going up to school board meetings, just highlighting what they're saying, trying to motivate other parents. And you are one of those parents. You're one of my motivations. What's your take on this video?
Well, I mean, obviously that's completely atrocious. No one should be talking to a child under the age of consent about any of that. And every state's different for age of consent. And I know that, CCSD has a policy on, the controversial sexual content. And I believe that even before that policy, it was pretty much adhered to here. Again, as I have 6 kids, I have 2 seniors, a sophomore, a 7th grader, a third grader, and one going into kindergarten this year. And in 6 kids,
God bless
I
you.
have never, ever
You go, girl.
have had to deal with any of that. But you're damn straight. If I did, that would be me at that board meeting.
Right.
Because I have no problem with anyone teaching kids about sexuality.
Biology. How is a baby made?
Right. Yeah. Things like, things like that. I mean, obviously when they're that young, and this is what I'm saying, under age of consent.
Well, here in Nevada, age of consent is 16.
16, yeah.
So, for example, like I say, biology, I think, as soon as they're mature enough to understand.
Anatomy and biology are different than teaching about masturbation, anal sex, penetration, any of that.
Right, positions, whatever.
Because if it wasn't a teacher showing it, it is child porn, and you would go to jail for it. So exposing a child...
And that's what Candace Owens said.
Right.
Candace Owens said, if you have a problem with some of the material your teacher is showing and it's sexually explicit,
it's child pornography.
Don't go to the administrator, go to the police.
Absolutely. I did see that float around this past week, and I do fully believe that is true. Now, with my children, because I have so many friends that are... straight, bi, gay, lesbian. My best friend actually was texting me last week that she wants to be a drag queen. She loves it so much. And, so my kids have grown up since a very young age because my friends have been in my life a very long time, that I've personally had to have the conversations with them about, it's okay that men love men and women love women and women and men love each other. And some people like to dress up, some people don't. Like my kids, they understand that everybody's entitled to be and feel and do anything that they want to do because this is America. And none of us are the ones to tell them that that's right or wrong. But then again, we're also talking about full-grown adults that have the legal ability to make those decisions for themselves and live their beautiful life.
I constantly say on the show is, I don't know. I mean, you and your husband, super nice. I see you guys going to the pool and stuff on Facebook. I don't know anything about your personal sexual life.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't want to.
You know that I'm heterosexual. As far as you know, because I'm married.
I don't know. Maybe you
because
guys
I'm married
are
to a man.
swingers going to the green door or something.
No,
you know what I mean? But my point is, I don't know.
I have a really
and I have no desire to know. And I want you to come on the show because of your intelligence.
And I'll tell you what, we learned in the last couple of weeks that our wonderful neighbors used to host those swinging parties. And they're amazing. They're honestly some of the best neighbors I've ever met. They're in their 70s now, but they like to reminisce about, the 60s and 70s
parties.
and their swinging parties. So
and their religion, their sexual preferences, all that stuff is their business.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, I've personally never really associated with somebody who had or that outwardly to me or that I heard of ever spoke badly about anyone who chose their life, and no matter what that choice was. And so I think
but you even say you found out like after the fact and they weren't wearing a badge that says I'm a swinger?
No.
They don't put out, there's no swinger flag, that swinger appreciation month?
It actually came out because I had invited them we went to dinner with them and I invited them to the bar, because we were meeting some other friends at the bar. And the friends at the bar, the boy.
Knew him?
No. That would have been funny, right?
Oh, I haven't seen you in 20 years.
But he was a swinger, and so he likes to make lots of scissoring jokes. And so we were sitting at the table at the bar.
Am I allowed to ask what scissoring is, or should I just let that go?
It's a lesbian, I believe, somebody, it's women, it's a bad term for, like, women getting it on.
Scissoring. It coverage you only get on the Johnny Brew Show. Thank you.
So he threw his random, every 5 minute scissoring joke out, and they kind of started giggling, and then I'm like, well, what's so funny, Joan? And then she's like, well,
as a matter of fact,
we used to do this, and I was like, wow, again, something. It wasn't like, hey, by the way, like,
right,
I'm Anna, this
Speaking
is John.
Speaking of scissoring, I'm an expert,
right? Yeah. So, but it's always kind of amazing when you spend a little bit of time with anybody, how much you do learn about
and you learn
them.
something crazy, like, I go skydiving every weekend,
sure.
and you're like, oh, get out of here. I just see you sitting around playing video games. You go skydiving you do some cool stuff, and a lot of people, I'm teaching here, like, you got a podcast, you talk about politics. I'm like, no. I don't get involved in politics whatsoever.
But one point, though, that she did bring up in there, and this is a huge issue going on right now, is when they just told her time was up. And so at the board meeting the day after the work session, sorry, I don't know the date, they were discussing, they want to make the forum for comment public better. And so apparently our board is tossing around ideas to make that better.
And I heard somebody who I don't think I'm a fan of was really promoting that the most. Who was that? Is it the Cavazos that was really pushing hard to get the transparency? Brooks. And I don't.
No! I don't know because
I forget who it was too, but I know it's somebody that I'm not necessarily a fan of, and I was really impressed that they're really working behind the scenes.
Then it might be the president. It might be
Cavazos,
Trustee Cavazos. Yeah, but you can kind of see from everyone on the board that they're trying. They want consistency. It's kind of funny. I commented on that. I said, "Wow." I was like, most of the governmental bodies holding meetings had a Zoom account. And so when they would go into meetings, if you wanted to comment on something, you just called into the Zoom in the number, and then when either that agenda item or public agenda came up, they would call the last 4 digits of the phone number. I mean, we testified in the Assembly and the Senate that way. And I was like, wow, it's really shocking because CCSD already pays for a Zoom account, and you're telling me that we can't get a Zoom room, so people can call in live comments. And as I'm learning the ropes of this stuff, this is why I hold my public comment until the end now, because so much can happen during a meeting
that all of a sudden everything's upside down.
I may have prepared, for 2 weeks on A, B, and C, and then all this stuff happens in the 2 weeks or right at the meeting.
Or in the 2 hours.
Right. 2 hours. I wish they were 2 hours. And so, I'm learning to be a little more flexible on that. Just so
right.
At the
Don't
end.
prepare an entire statement with more of an outline.
When I first heard, them even discussing, because, some people are like, some people get to go over, some people, are right on time. The rules are there in the agenda. And before COVID, you actually got 2 minutes, not 90 seconds. So I believe someone has an open meeting law violation up because they have kind of hampered.
In the rules, it says 2 minutes.
No, the rules don't actually give a specified time. It just says reasonable. And when you have so many heated issues going on, is 90 seconds really reasonable when you get a parent like me pissed off
there's another problem,
other parents pissed off?
And then you're
I'm not going to sum it up because then I get on a roll and then I'm not going to shut up and then you're going to keep listening to me.
And then you're going to turn off my mic. And what I don't like is I see sometimes they have 60 seconds or 90 seconds.
It's 90.
Well, other ones. I've been observing school board meetings across the country. And it's the way, there's something that drives me nuts about the way people say 30 seconds. Well, the people, there's a mom up there breaking down in tears. Yeah. There's got to be a more tactful, can't they have a timer up there? Like on a radio or something, you see how much time you have, you could start to wrap it up. That impersonal, you're in the middle of telling your life story in like 30 seconds.
Right, but the problem is like, say you have 30 seconds, okay? And your time's up and you're on that podium. And you show up with your piece of paper or phone, it's easier to kind of write down that thought process. A lot of people aren't good with public speaking, so they get very nervous and they
it takes them 30 seconds just to get comfortable. Right.
And so when the meeting started back at the LVA theater, there was a timer up there so you could see. But the problem is say I wrote something. It doesn't mean I can speak it in 30 seconds. But this is where I was telling parents, you can also email it in.
And have your entire thought heard.
It goes into, public comment. You can go back to any board meeting, open up the PDFs. They scan those all into public comment. And
the question is, how much do they read it?
Well, that too, because that was when the Attorney General's office gave them the open meeting violation. It was over the non-reading of emails, and you couldn't email before. This is new. This was new.
COVID thing.
The COVID thing. You also couldn't call in and leave a message. So these are COVID things, and I know that they want to take that away, and I'm actually for that because as much as I try to advocate out in the community, everyone wants an easy solution. And if the easy solution for them is calling or emailing, then they're not, I guess, maybe as passionate about the issue, because if you were, you would take the time and show up.
Right. But at the same time, I just feel like shows like when you had Danielle Ford on, Katie Williams was supposed to come on last month. I just feel like the exposure to these people, the exposure for them to our audience, whether it's yours at the T show Spilling the CCSD Tea, or you're talking about my show, which might have a slightly different, crossover audience. Having them exposed to our audience, having our audience exposed to them, I just feel like nobody really knows each other, and that's where rumors run rampant. Because if the only thing you know about somebody is secondhand information, you're never going to get a true understanding about where that person's coming from, what they're trying to do.
Right, and in the grand scheme of not being a super fan of anyone, I really, I asked Lola Brooks if in the future that I could touch base on some things with her, because I haven't wholly agreed with things that she's voted on and done. And I want to better understand that, because there's a reason she's doing it, just like there's a reason that Danielle does stuff, and there's a reason
So I shouldn't just assume they're evil.
Right.
You're trying to find out why.
I'm trying to find out why, because I know exactly why I think I don't like her, but I think there's a reality behind that I probably don't.
For example, this is totally out of context, but I believe it's a great parallel, is the Governor Kristi Noem in South Dakota. They had that anti-biological men playing in girls' sports law that was passed by everybody, and Tucker Carlson excoriated her, and she's been a staunch, one of the great governors, whether you're talking about Abbott or DeSantis. Noem was like number 3 until she vetoed this bill. And she was trying to explain to people that she wanted the bill just to be about high school and lower, because otherwise we're going to lose our NCAA contracts. And she doesn't have the same pull that DeSantis has. DeSantis has the University of Miami, the University of Florida. You know, she's got these powerhouses. So if DeSantis says, all right, NCAA, you don't want to come to Florida? I'll start my own league. And NCAA says, oh, no.
Right.
We'll figure it out.
Right.
Kristi Noem doesn't have that kind of power. She's got maybe 2 Division I colleges there, and she doesn't want to lose that exposure and revenue.
Contractual obligation.
There you go. And so she's doing what on paper looks like a horrible thing for the conservative movement, but she's also got to worry about her constituents and what's best for the state as a whole. And she could be against biological men playing in female sports and veto this because she thinks it's what's best, and nobody's given her the chance to speak. Even Tucker Carlson, who I have a lot of respect for, he got mad and he just flies off on a tangent and doesn't give people the opportunity to explain to people why they do what they do.
Well, it's because people internalize, and when a lot of people feel they've hit the stone where they don't agree with you, they shut you down, they shut you out, and they refuse to have a meaningful conversation. And we see that happen all across social media. We see that happen in real life. I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing that you can say that will ever deter any thought process that I have towards that matter.
Well, last night I was on the Strip and I was interviewing people. I was telling you before we got on here today, and I'm talking to some progressives, and I'm talking about one person we were talking about the sex with the kids and what's age appropriate. And she's like, oh, well, that should prevent babies. We should teach kids all about sex as soon as possible and teach them about everything from masturbation to anal to everything and as young as possible. And I'm sitting there because I want her to get I want to say, stop, shut up, you're talking to people. I don't want people to hear it. Right. But at the same time, I let her talk because I want people to see where these people are coming from, and I don't want to cut her off.
Sure.
I have a clip here. And I wasn't going to play it, but I know this is something that's very near and dear to your heart, talking about teacher abuse. And this is going to lead us into some questions about cameras in the classroom. And this happens to be a teacher. It seems like the teacher is playing favorites to members of the LGBTQ community.
No, that never happened.
And then one of the boys,
and I don't mean even about the community, just favoritism.
Right, in general.
Yeah.
And then you have a, what does cisgendered CIS, what does that stand for again? I always forget. But I know that means like you're like heterosexual. I know it stands for something. But anyway.
I've never heard that before.
Cisgendered, CIS gendered.
I'm going to look real quick. Keep going now. Keep
all
going.
Right, I got 2 producers looking it up for me. All right. But my point was, you know, he even said that he was doing it to be annoying, but he was saying, you know, where's my straight pride cupcake? And she's like, and she just totally goes off on him and makes him feel even less when the kid admitted he was kind of being I
honestly, I think we put too many names to stuff because so I just looked up cisgender, denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender corresponds with their birth sex. Why
does it stand for something, or is it?
No,
it's
not
an acronym.
It's an adjective.
Oh,
yeah, it's not an acronym. But why do we actually have to have a word for that?
Isn't that
heterosexual?
Right.
Why is there another word?
Okay. Let's move on to the tape. This is a teacher giving out cupcakes to, LGBTQ, I guess it's for Pride Month or Pride Week or something. And the other kid in the back kind of gives her a little nudge about, hey, what about straight people? And this is how the teacher reacts. And this is the adult in the room.
Just because I support another thing doesn't mean I don't support straight people too. Just because I'm Mexican doesn't mean I don't also support black people, or Irish people, or ignorant people.
Never said it was like that.
Okay.
Just said be gay, no word.
Would you like a special unicorn cupcake for being straight jerk?
Yes.
All right, come here. Get a straight jerk cupcake for being a pill.
I'm just trying to be annoying.
You are annoying. You were very successful. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What a dip. All right.
What?
A dip. Like a dipstick, a butthead, a weasel. A weasel. Pain in my butt. This summer is LGBTQ month, and I'm not going to see you, so I want to give you something. Thank you. You're welcome. Everybody's welcome to a unicorn cupcake. No. I just want to make sure there's enough for the people that wanted them.
Now, I mean, again, just like you're trying to keep me grounded, and I really, really, really appreciate this. This could be a simple clip Where yesterday this teacher was giving out straight cupcakes
We don't know
and
that,
calling the gay kids dips.
Sure.
And that was dip, D-I-P.
It really sounded like the other one, and I just went, whoa.
Well, but you could see, I could see, maybe this is an opinion and it's not a fact, but I just feel like, I bet you this teacher's like this all the time.
Maybe, I don't know the backstory, but for face value, the reason, unfortunately, that we have to designate months or certain holidays that are non-pagan is because of the persecution and the
non-inclusivity.
Right, and discrimination that people have faced throughout history. And so if we were all real, true humans, why can't we all just be one? We wouldn't have to celebrate all these different things because we would realize that everyone everyone is an individual and everyone is included in our society and system, right, and respected and valued and promoted and
you know what you get when you break down groups and keep breaking down groups from sexuality to gender to personal preference. You know what you get when you break it down? Every single person is an individual. You get individuals.
And you can put a label on a group. You can call a group something. You can do all of that. But so they've been studying lots of things, especially in American history, or when I say American history, the history of the United States. And I think it kind of, this rolls into what I think you want to go into next, about all types of these groups. And they're finding scouring through the Department of Justice and the Department of Education and everything, they're finding that the more they study it and break it down, they can't label anything because every human is an individual.
Exactly. And, from gay people, there's like 12 branches of gay people. I'm learning in Clark County, there's 12 branches of Republicans. Everything.
And not to be ignorant, but I stopped kind of I'm a, 80s, 90s kid. And I think that was like at the cusp where they started really putting names on things. And it got so overwhelming in high school. I was like, well, you know what? Like, if you really have to do all of this, it's how am I supposed to know? And I mean, come on, is that a conversation starter? Hi, I'm Anna. What do you identify as?
And what pronoun would you like to use?
But who starts a conversation that way?
Yeah. My name is John. Refer to me as they.
Well, and regardless, if people want to be called it or them or they or he or she, or it's an individual preference. And, you're never going to take individuality out of society or the human race. And until more people just realize that we're all individuals, we're all allowed to breathe, feel, be, and do within our, rights.
As long as you're not infringing on somebody else's rights.
Within your rights, right. That's what I'm saying. Then nobody in this country should be having a problem with anybody. And if anything, I guess I'll save that. But if anything, if people realized that we can all help each other and that we all are really similar. Right.
We have a lot more in common than we
anyone
don't.
Would think. And actually, Annie Black said this to me a couple months ago when a lot of stuff started going on.
Fan.
Yeah, and I was just like, I'm online one night and I'm going, whoa. I honestly couldn't even read it fast enough to digest it. And I asked her, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, you know what? She goes, I'm not taking sides. I'm just here. I'm doing my thing. I'm trying to help my constituents. And that's all I can do. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how, because it's like with anything, anything, this is not just Republican or not. It is perfectly okay for me to be a Republican and not agree with 98% of my Republican constituents. It's also okay if I do and
whether you're talking about masks or vaccines or background checks.
Issues are just as individual as ideology. And it's perfectly okay that if you don't take a side, that's acceptable too.
Right.
And that's something that I think a lot of people are having a hard time wrapping their head around, is that if I choose not to get into an issue or I care not to, I have that right. And you can't social media bully me into taking a side.
Right. Maybe you don't know where the virus came from. And you don't want to be team bat. And you don't want to be team Wuhan lab because you really don't know and you don't
Maybe
feel qualified.
I just don't give a flying... And I just want our country to move forward and focus on that. You know, it's as simple as that sometimes. And because of media, we get, I've just been talking about this, we get these buzzkill words that are, you know, like abusing student, sexually explicit, CRT.
That's what
you
sells.
Start selling all of those words and people just start going crazy. Or the one right now, you know, Biden just signed making Juneteenth a federal holiday. So much celebration this weekend going on. And everybody, if here in Vegas, if you're not a parent or you're not on like some of the parenting pages, there's tons of activities going on throughout town this weekend that are really, they look like a lot of fun. I personally won't be able to make it, but it's out there. If you,
What's more fun than the Johnny Brew Show?
Going to the pool when it's 115 degrees out. So it's just, you know, people really, the backbone for people is to be like, when you do pick a side, know what you're picking and educate yourself before you just start, you know, a lot of the
people shouldn't be on so many sides because people are just too ignorant.
Well,
like I do a lot of research and I'm still ignorant. Like this.
That's what I'm saying. There's so much information out there that you almost need to devote like a month at a time to one issue. And when I look at an issue, I read it all. Right. I don't just look at like my very conservative little website. No,
right. I actually try to look at the other side more than my own side.
Because you got to understand. And if you're not willing to understand all sides of it, then I mean, who are we educating, and who are we trying to fight for or work with or develop, you know, better relationships
Before we
with?
move on, I did want you to comment on this because I know, is it 1 or 2 child you have on the autism scale? Mm-hmm. And I know you were concerned about, you know, certain teacher abuses, and it's come up about cameras in the classroom and the way teachers treat kids.
I'll try to make this as quick as possible.
Keep it short. I know, within 20 minutes.
Okay, I can probably do better than that. A couple years ago, there was a bill up in the Assembly that SPED parents, special education parents, were fighting to have CCSD equip the special education classrooms with a camera kind of comparable to like when you take your kid to preschool daycare. You know, you can log in, you can check out the camera room, see him playing, go back to work. You could log in anytime you wanted just to peek in that your kid's doing okay. Some of those facilities would do a loop over, like, you know, say 24, 72 hours. So if something did happen, they could go back and review the footage.
But you can't go back from a month ago.
Right. You had to catch it like right off the bat. And so the district, upon information and belief, CCSD, vehemently opposed that. And they cited FERPA violations, which is privacy, because even in a SPED classroom, there's about 8 students to the class. And they said that, you know, if one of those 8 parents did not want that camera in the classroom, that they were entitled to that privacy. And the problem is in our SPED classes, not all, but it's predominantly nonverbal autistic children. These are children that can't come home and say, hey, Mom, Miss Susie called me a diphead.
These aren't kids who shake their leg a little bit. These are kids who have real motor skill problems,
motor
or
communication, or emotional disturbances. My 12-year-old is a storyteller. I've gotten many calls from a principal giggling about his stories. Moving forward, they didn't pass it. The total cost, I believe, was somewhere CCSD cited as being around, I believe, about $280,000.
That's nothing. I mean, when you're talking about a $5.2 billion budget.
Exactly, right? And whatnot. So it did not pass. And then now we move into the age of COVID, where we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in less than 9 months on not just cameras, on GoGuardian, on Chromebooks, on software. And GoGuardian is a whole show on its own. But essentially, FERPA went out the door. When you picked up that Chromebook from your child's school, FERPA went out the door.
100%.
And what CCSD did, so this is really interesting. Most of my kids have their own laptops. And I didn't want to pick up a district device because why have an extra? I mean, then this means I have 12 laptops in my house, not
if you got
6.
a TV in your bedroom, you don't need another TV in your bedroom.
And then one of the kids took a crap, and then, or sorry, the device took a crap, but he had school, and I wasn't letting him on mine, so I ran down to the school, picked one up, brought it in the house, right? So when you open up your device and log in, it activates Go Guardian, and certain people in CCSD say, well, it only monitors like what they're Googling, the YouTube, things like that. But I have a very good friend who's an intelligence officer with the Air Force, and she brought it very quickly to my attention that Go Guardian was way much more than that. It can record, they can listen in. It was basically entirely spyware.
Right, and
so,
you could be sitting there doing work against the teachers union in the background
actually,
or on a phone call.
I have a friend who was standing in her kitchen while her son was logged in doing his class, and she's in her kitchen on her phone talking to her friend, and I mean, literally got in trouble with the district because she was basically saying that teacher was a lot of things. And the teacher reported it to the principal. Oh, and she fought him. She's like, you know what? I'm in my own home.
Right, I can say whatever
I want. And it's not that like anyone in the class heard because he's special education too, so it was one-on-one time. But they really put her through a ringer for a couple months.
For talking
for
to her
speaking
friend
her
on
mind,
a cell phone.
Her own opinion in her own home about the teacher that was on.
But meanwhile, a teacher could go on Facebook and say F Trump, and that's their own private time.
Well, right, exactly. I did have an issue with CCSD last summer when I was being vicious.
You had an issue with CCSD?
With
breaking news.
Public comment, like how teachers were behaving themselves last summer on social media, especially during the board meetings, in that nice little chat box. I had 4 death threats. 2 threats that if they were in my kids' schools, okay, which goes back to like teacher abuse. If you really want to get into abuse, I'll introduce you to Diana. She loves, to always bring this to the attention of the public because the only cases that the general public hears about abuse in the district are the ones where the parents actually have the courage to go to the news. Or they filed their lawsuit, and there's people, media people, they watch that docket, and they see, certain organizations, and as soon as a lawsuit's filed,
certain
they pull the
keywords,
docket. Right, they pull it, and they see it, and then, they'll run a story on it. So just in the past couple months, there was a settlement of a teacher abuse case on a SPED kid. The teacher was using some type of wooden stick to beat the kids, and these were kids that some were, it's a mixed class of 8 kids, so some were verbal, some weren't. And the most heartbreaking thing that I read in that article was that an original plaintiff filed for their kid, and the attorney reached out to one of the other parents in the classroom because that child, the secondary child, was nonverbal. The parent had no idea that their child had been getting abused at school until the plaintiff's lawyer contacted her to make her aware.
Right.
The school didn't tell them.
Right.
But I also know staff that have told parents when their kids were being abused because they knew they couldn't report it to their employer in fear of retaliation, and they were really, really great human beings.
Kind of backdooring it so you could bring it to the attention.
Brought it right to the parents' attention so it could be dealt with. And when you're looking at a system that's supposed to be educating our kids, and they're constantly ducking and dodging abuse cases, the one right before that I can remember, I could Google, but was just a couple of years ago, a school bus driver on a special education bus raped a little girl. I don't remember how old she was, but she was the last passenger on the bus. CCSD continued to employ him for over a year before they finally terminated his contract. A year. It took them a year. This guy raped a little girl on her school bus, and they continued to pay him.
That's crazy. Because I know if a teacher says a 4-letter word, they get suspended right away pending investigation.
Right.
but something as serious as rape doesn't hold that same amount of water because it's a bus driver?
I went back because you can search the employee directory, and I searched it and went from the date of the incident and then looked at the date of leaving, and it was about a year.
All right.
So it's there. I like to believe that it's not as rampant as,
Right.
it's something that I pray about a lot, that, when anyone in our world, I mean, we can turn on the news at any given time and there's kids missing and, the little boy Liam, that his
Right.
mom killed him. When the detective, I think you saw my post about it, when they announced that they identified him and found his family, the detective was so beside himself because when they literally asked for the community to help identify him,
it.
they had so many tips.
Hundreds of kids that parents thought.
But what the key the words that I honed in on, children that resembled him that were missing, and if they got hundreds of tips on Liam.
Right.
Oh
And
my God.
this is just Latino
This is
4-year-olds.
right.
Yeah, I'm not
Well,
black
like
kids,
7 or
white
8, whatever.
kids.
Right.
But it's
this is one kid.
just such a small faction.
But then, but then it's so sad. Like right now, there's a 15-year-old girl who went missing
I just
like a
saw
day and a
that.
half ago.
And she told her parents, don't worry about me.
Yeah, that's all
And we
fishy.
don't know if that's
Last scene in
actually
North Las
her writing
Vegas,
it.
whatever was supposed to be going to the airport. You're not seeing Metro throw the same push out as they did helping to identify Liam. And if they did, she probably would have already been found.
Right, and it must be every day. Because
Right.
I'm hearing about it almost every day, and I know I'm not hearing about all of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. So, again, we just pray every day.
Instead
that our
of
children
worrying
are
about
safe.
this, it seems like our higher ups, our lawmakers, our unions, our school boards are less worried about missing and exploited children and more about talking about critical race theory.
Money.
Well, maybe that's what's
Money.
paying the bills right now.
Right, money.
And there's plenty of parents who are understandably upset. Some parents believe that we need to have a more human side to the African American slavery plight, a more human side to the Native Americans and what they went through as all of a sudden this new group of people, Europeans, started coming over. And I teach my own kids. I mean, June is my favorite time of the year because I teach math 11 months out of the year. And for June, no math. I teach kids about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and stuff like that.
And you're running a summer camp, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Which is over this week in July. Summer classes, just math. But and we're talking about, I went to school. I'm a little bit older than you, but you're close to the same generation. I learned about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I learned about the Trail of Tears. I learned about spreading disease through blankets. I learned a lot of the horrors of American history. And I also learned about the Revolutionary War. And I learned about the Civil War, about how, 500,000 Americans died, 300,000 of them from the Union, army fighting for abolition. And, they were predominantly white people. And, I believe that that's super important to know that, the African American community was not alone. There were people who were willing to fight to their death in order to have all men
equal.
And that's a synonym for
I
human.
know. Equal.
All men are created equal, have equal opportunity. And parents are complaining that they're literally taking out the Civil War. They're taking out the Revolutionary War in order to double down on the coverage of slavery and the American Indian plight. And again, we want to make it more human and make people be able to relate to it, but it can't be at the expense of our most important parts of history, which enabled us to get rid of slavery, which enabled us to have the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and we're losing all that. Oh, at least that's what people are complaining about CRT. And this was Don Lemon and his little friend, Chris Cuomo, talking about how they feel about parents who are genuinely concerned about critical race theory. Play tape.
If you are the person who happens to be telling the history, you're going to tell it in your favor. And the best way to correct that so that some people aren't over-indexed in the history of the country is to have all voices, as many voices as possible, included in that history.
You know, I had somebody today saying, well, you know, I'm worried. I want...
In the telling of that history.
All right. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt my beautiful
No, you're
producer. She's right there. If they stop this right here, right now, I'm good. You're right. We need more voices. We need more people to give different aspects of history and everything else. And I wish they would just stop there.
They keep going.
Oh, play tape. Sorry.
I don't want people lecturing my kid like, hey, you're white, you're bad because of this and this. I said, why do you think that's what it will be? I said, that's the only problem, is your perception. Why wouldn't want your kid to understand the roots of slavery and the legacy of slavery, how it is played out for enslaved people as a culture throughout the years? Why wouldn't you want that?
You don't think that telling people that they were beaten and sold and lynched makes them feel bad?
That's right. That's right. Yes, that's exactly right.
That's all.
Nobody's happy to hear it.
That's their idea of. That's the whole thing about what privilege is that people don't like to have their pleasure interrupted, their peace interrupted, and so people think that it should be the way that it should be because they have been taught that in this country. But, you know, having people come to the realization, especially ancestors of slaves, that they were enslaved and that they were beaten, that they were sold, that they weren't able to accrue wealth, that they weren't able to go to school, they weren't able to go vote. You think that makes them feel good? So the folks on the other side, stop making it about you and be curious instead of judgmental.
All right.
Keywords right there.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
Start being curious and not judgmental. Those are good words right there.
But I learned.
The biggest problem across, I don't even think just our nation right now, but Europe, I know, is dealing with this. I say it like that because
they're not
a
as
lot of
diverse
it is ignorance. And when you look at if you look at the United States history for like the Emancipation Proclamation, Women's Suffrage Act, the United States did not pass these laws because the people wanted it. The United States passed these laws because it made them look better to third world countries. And anytime the United States has the ability to pass something, make something look really good from the outside or the feel goods, it makes the rest of the world look like a pile of shit, especially when it comes to equal rights.
Right.
And progressing in humanity. And so don't ever be fooled that anything happened because we, the people, spoke
right,
up.
and that's another point. You know, that first of all, you know, we could get into CRT and the Founding Fathers, and I have proof that they did not build this country based on white supremacy. And we could go, I talk about it all the time when they talking about the Northwest Territories, any new territories can't have slaves, yada, yada, yada.
But the problem going on right now, especially amongst our population, is that they're using the word CRT like one of those buzzwords. And it's trying to, I believe it's taking time, attention, and effort away from like the anti-racism policy or the multiculturalism. And parents are so freaked out about this word that it's blinding them to the things that are passed law and are going to be included.
But
and
part of my problem is, like, for example, he's saying, why don't people want to know more about American Indians? Why don't people want to know more about the slave? I learned all that.
Right.
Like, I watched Roots in high school. It was an eye-opening, disgusting miniseries that was necessary.
Each state's Department of Education has a curriculum department, and they are the ones responsible for going to the publishers, getting material, basically authorizing it for use, and then disseminating that back into a library for your state, districts. Every county has a different district, to go up into that library and pull approved curriculum. And so I've spoken about this a few times. When Assembly Bill, 261 or 491? I don't know. I can't even keep those numbers straight anymore. But when the multiculturalism passed, it was testified to in both houses, and I regurgitated it for people who didn't listen. But the teachers union and the State Board of Education testified that because we're even pre-COVID, publishers are behind about 7 years for adding new content, publishing new books. And so opening the door into allowing a better education system for culturalism, I guess, right? Well, I guess I could keep saying multiculturalism, but culturalism, okay? We're behind. We're behind. Our system is behind. And I would say that if Nevada's behind, and we're, 48th now, or 49th? Other states probably are way more ahead of us. But when you're dead last, I think we're going to be dead last for actually getting this curriculum in. And I believe that's where some of these parents are kind of freaking out because the law passed. And I think that they're scared that instead of teaching multicultural history, they're going to have teachers teaching things from their view and perspective, maybe not what is historically accurate.
Been records of teachers saying, I'll teach it the way I want. When I say
historically accurate, I don't mean white supremacy history. I mean going into the cultures, taking...
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not at all. And so when
but also we need to though always make sure, like teachers, if you're got a heart for the American Indian. Mm-hmm. Okay, you want to spend an extra week on that because, you want to make it human. If your heart is with, anti-slavery but the number one most important thing that American children need to know is the system the founding fathers created so we can make this progress. The word slave doesn't appear in the Constitution. Everybody's considered a person. Everybody's considered equal. And I know, because you could see from their journals and stuff, people as opposing as Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, they were opposite as far as federalism is concerned, but they both were for the abolition of slavery, and not all the southern states would have signed on and completed the Union. So they were very deliberate in their wording and the way they laid things out in order to enable us to abolish slavery, maybe not in 1789, but hopefully by 1865, you know what I'm saying?
And now here we are, 2021, and
it's back to the top of the conversation board.
When we should actually be 200 years ahead of all of that, we're not. And
we can't change history. We need to learn history. We need to learn from our mistakes. Right. But when we're looking at solutions, we can't solve slavery in 1850. It's happened. It was horrible.
Slavery's been going on since before.
Well, if you're anti-slavery, let's go to Libya.
Right.
There's slavery in Libya right now. There's slavery in China right now. There's racism, real racism, real slavery. And this country is not racist. I mean, I know a lot of people. I'm a conservative. So if you were a progressive, you would think I know all the racists. I'll tell you, in my heart of hearts, I know one racist. And these people that are getting called white supremacists and not being led into the CCRP and stuff like that, like the Brittany Sheehan or the Natalie Thomas. I don't know. These are two people that they will say what they believe in. There's nobody putting a muzzle on their mouth. They are ready to speak their mind and they believe in their convictions. If they were racist, they would tell you. They would tell you, I am a racist and this is why I'm a racist, because they tell you everything else. This is how I am, this is why I am. Why does all the progressives think that all these outspoken conservatives are closet racists?
A lot of it is just because a lot of progressives kind of, and I don't know many, but I mean in my readings, a lot of progressives try to isolate race as your identifying factor of being a human being.
And that's disgusting.
And when we go back to our conversation about individuality, it's not your only defining characteristic to make you who you are. And something that I don't hear anybody talking about is character, morals, value.
We did in the 60s and 70s and 80s during the civil rights movement.
Right, well, we did, but like right now, I don't hear those things being talked about. But, you know, honestly, it's just, I've been thinking about this the past couple of weeks, well, actually the past couple of months, like, kind of really how moving forward from a lot of this. And, you know, and obviously I've talked to a lot of the parents that have showed up at the board meetings, and they're very, you know, very concerned about the CRT. And I will always continue to say that it's a distraction. And if you're so distracted by the word or the acronym, that when I make a post or I bring something else up that you probably should be paying attention to, and you won't get involved because you're so hung up on a word, you're doing a disservice to all of our students. Because
but when you're talking about the rules of radicals, when you're talking about critical theory in general, it wasn't critical race theory, it was critical
legal. It was critical legal theory.
And then it
started at Harvard. It started at Harvard, okay? And I don't know the guy's name. I mean, again, I've tried to educate myself about it. But
and they use it in a little red book.
Critical race theory actually started as critical legal theory, where they had legal scholars that were going in and looking at our laws and, you know, ratifications, and, you know, the history of how the United States has made laws and amendments to the Constitution and whatnot. And we could never get through this in 20 minutes, but it started to question the legal principles in the foundation of our laws. And then the word flipped. So
well, because they wanted to do it with class, and that's how Mao did his revolution,
right,
by separating the Chinese people by class, creating a class war, and then coming in and saving the people from the problem he created, which is basically a mirror image of what's happening here, and it's easier because a race instead of class is easier to identify. Oh, you're black, you're yellow, you're brown, you're white. It's a lot easier to pick teams and divide people. But it's amazing that people, and that's why I think you have the problem you have, is people see CRT and they understand that's a rule to radical, that's a socialist, communist manifesto that is used to divide.
Right, and then so, like, for the June 24th agenda,
well, that's my next question. Thank you for the segue. The last segment is, what is on the agenda for CCSD?
A lot of things. There's so much. I've perused it. I haven't started downloading the documents, but there's a lot there. But there is a status on the anti-racism policy. So you can bet your ass the people are going to be showing up talking about CRT because they see the word anti-racism.
And let's encourage them to look at the details so that way
but here, that is the problem. Nobody has even said what this policy is going to be comprised of. And so when CCSD remains kind of silent and isn't really giving like an outline of what it's going to entail, it leaves parents in jeopardy. And so, of course, you know, anyone concerned is going to show up. And you know, I love when parents show up. And you know, all of you women and teachers and everybody who's been showing up, keep showing up. Because if you're not talking about it, it's not, you know, it's not that it's not happening. I will stand by what I said the last time that I was here, was that I'm not against multiculturalism. I'm not against the anti-racism policy. We need it. It's a long time coming. What I you know, honestly, I think I'm going to actually order a couple of these alleged CRT books and read them.
Oh, I believe in Ibram X. Kendi and stuff like that.
There's one, in one of the articles that I was reading over the weekend, there's one that was banned in Arizona schools, something boy. I'm so sorry. I don't know it, but I made a note of it.
To find out what's in it.
Well, right, because so apparently a school brought this book in, and apparently probably a parent complained about it. It went up to like the state. The state went in and literally took books out of kids' hands, confiscated the book. Then somebody filed a lawsuit about it against the state. It went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. Basically, give the book back. Because it taught, I can't remember the exact ruling because I didn't actually read the ruling. I just read the highlight that the Supreme Court told them basically to give the book back because I don't know, don't quote me on any of that because I only just read the article once, but I want to read that book because I want to see if the contents
real
of
examples
it are disturbing to me at all. But if we're talking about a high school book, I honestly don't really feel that there's going to be any book. My kids see more crap on TikTok
I don't
and
have
YouTube.
a problem with a senior reading the 1619 Project.
Right. I don't, honestly, if my kids want to read a book, they're going to read a book. And I'm never going to be the person to tell them, like, oh, not in my house or nah. I don't raise my kids that way. I want them
But there is a difference
to
between
think.
freedom of speech and what you assign in school or
Correct.
in the
And this
Navy
is in
and
my
stuff like that.
this is in my home. This isn't public education. And because we're talking about public education, every single taxpayer, regardless of having a child in the district, your voice matters. You own a home, you pay school taxes. You go buy something, you're paying school taxes. You rent a room, you're paying school taxes. This is what I think a lot of the community doesn't understand.
What else
I don't
is
have
gonna
kids.
be on the agenda?
I don't have kids.
We have
it doesn't bother
3
me.
minutes left.
Okay, 3 minutes. So honestly, that's just about it. There's a couple policies coming through, but they're not really anything that I have seen to be concerned about. But I haven't opened them either.
Tell me about the top 3 things you're addressing on supporting CCSD parents.
Right now, one is continuing to educate about CRT and looking at it from different levels. I mean, I know you follow the group, so I know you're trying to give me the highlight on that. A big discussion over the weekend was the lack of taste in Little Darlings billboards almost every year, the month of June.
I thought everybody thought they were funny.
Well, they are, and when you get down to it, that can be a whole conversation.
it's very unholy.
Right, it is, but whatever.
But we do live in Las Vegas.
Right. I have been, just so everyone knows, our parks and recreation are so short-staffed that the pools are only open in certain areas of town, like 2 or 3 days a week right now. So if you have a teen, if you have a teen who needs a job, they'll CPR certify CPR train you. We need lifeguards at the pools. It's 115 now, and if it's a day of the week that we don't have access to pools, I mean, kids are inside, but...
And there's nothing that spells success more than having a job before you graduate.
Sure, and whatnot. And then, the big one, North Las Vegas announced that it is launching a program. It's going to be a call center. The phone number will go live next week, so I'll share that with you so you can share it. But it's proposing to be kind of a one-stop call for parents to get information for resources that CCSD may not necessarily be reaching out to you and telling you about, like school choice. We've had, in the last year or so, there's been a lot of changes into school zones and stuff like that, where but basically you can call in and say, hey, I have a math genius and they're at this school and I don't really think that they're being challenged. They're in the GATE program.
Resource.
Right. Hey, they're in the GATE program, but is there a better school out there that's maybe a STEM academy or something?
Right, and then they could find out about the one up the block. What's the name of it? Hyde Park is one of the best math middle schools in Las Vegas.
I wouldn't know unless you just told me because, But right, so I'm going to contact them tomorrow and see if I can volunteer because I think that's a really great resource for the community. So, like I said, I'll share that number.
I heard a rumor that CCSDT, spelling the CCSDT, might be nearing an end. I'm hoping that's not true.
I don't really know yet. I mean, obviously, there's so much. We could sit here and talk all day about the issues that go on,
and that's why I have you on at least once a month because
because there's so much, and it's I raised 6 kids, and this has been a full-time job this entire past year. The research, if anyone really saw what I did day in and day out to know what I know about what
I have
they're
a
doing,
taste of what you're doing.
It's
it's
typically about 6 to 8 hours a day, if not more. And that's not the show. That's just staying on top of the documents, making sure when I go and start spouting about money that I had the correct amount, the policies, things like that. It's so much, and it's so stressful to me because I don't really feel... I do it just because I do it, and I don't really see anyone else doing it, and it's for the kids. I mean, I'm trying, but I just am not sure how to move towards a solution base, because every issue that I encounter, the solution would be with CCSD, and they refuse to address the problem
but you're
to come up with a
educating
solution.
people. You're educating, and as the snowball gets going down the hill, once this few people turn into more and more people, that's where it's going to happen. And the only way it's going to happen is
when I get
like
more parents that would listen to the current agenda items, the actionable items. That's the key words. Actionable items.
Right, don't go in on about CRT when it's anti-racism. Right,
like you know, and I've done, I think, my wholehearted best to educate people in the difference, and I'll, you know, obviously continue to do that. So I'm not really sure what the future of that show is. It's just something that nothing else was really going on at the time. I think you were just launching, and I was just like, wow, like, how can I get this out here more?
I promise you guys that regardless of spilling the CCSD, we're going to drag Anna in here. And we're going to give her husband goodies.
Some coffee.
So he'll hang out and wait with us. And because Anna, I mean, you know, the reason why I wanted you to become our educational correspondent, I'm plugged in to education. I know a lot more than the average Joe, and I feel like you know 10 times more than me, and that's why we're always asking you to
and I
come
feel
by
like
and
I
fill
have
us in.
so much more to still learn. So, and I don't mind growing and learning, and like I said, reaching out and maybe creating, you know, when I say relationships, like outreach, I mean, I may not agree with you, I may not agree with you, I may not agree with you, but we can all bring stuff to the table and get anything done, as long as we know that what's in sight is for the best interest of our students and our children.
We could promise
it
that
takes a village.
Thanks,
and
Hillary.
Vegas is actually one place where the village just kind of really isn't there. So, you know, hopefully we just keep moving forward and build that and
get better.
Yeah.
Let's get better than we were yesterday.
And I do want to thank you, because you do allow me to be as
frank,
but I do know, even as a Republican, you're more conservative than I am. And I think maybe just because I realize the end game is raising beautiful, healthy children, that my opinions and views sometimes may not necessarily coincide with yours, and you still invite me back.
Oh my God. And same with Danielle Ford. I mean, Danielle Ford is way beyond, you know, I'm here. Yeah. Am I on the right? All right. Yeah. You're there. There's Danielle. And, you know, Danielle is welcome to come in. Katie, I don't know which side of my side she would have to sit on, but we need to discuss, we need to have dialogue, and we need to hear each other and grow from each other.
One thing for the 24th, I keep asking, I've been asking since like February, why Dr. Jara does not do the public Q&As like he did in early March, you know, where they opened it up, you could send in a question on Facebook Live, you could go attend in person. It got a lot of questions answered at the time.
And that makes parents feel good.
And I think, and I keep telling them this, I sent an email about it, they said they'd let me know when the next one's scheduled. And then Danielle actually brought it up at the discussion time at the last meeting about doing that, because I think that it would alleviate a lot of parents showing up at the board meetings frustrated. If he would open himself up, he's paid for by our taxes.
And
he works for us.
I tell people, maybe you don't give a shit.
Right.
At least pretend to give a shit.
Right.
And that gives
he
that
cares.
No, I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying that illusion of, or not an illusion, or the practice of engaging with parents makes parents feel better and more part of the system.
Well, that's why it pissed me off so bad that instead of doing another public Q&A, he went to the CCSD parent, the PTA page, and did their little private community Q&A. But it's not interactive.
Right.
You submit questions ahead of time. They pick the questions they want to ask him. So to me, it's not.
It's like a Joe Biden press conference.
I don't know. I don't watch his press conferences.
Oh, he has a list of people he calls on, and they have a list of questions they're allowed to ask.
Yeah. So if everybody could send an email in to board, BOARD, MTG, comments with an S at the end, at nv.ccsd.net, and ask that Dr. Jara start holding monthly Q&As.
And we'll see if we can get that link in the description. And finally, regardless of your media future with Spilling the CCSD tea, can we count on you as a resource for supporting CCSD parents, empowering CCSD parents?
Oh yeah, empowering CCSD parents will never go away. So yeah.
All right, very good. So guys, I mean, anything you want to know, please sign up for Empowering CCSD Parents, and you can submit your questions directly to Anna.
What most importantly about that page is that I created that page because the CCSD parent page, because it's run by Nevada PTA, they can't be as open about, like it's monitored, like certain topics.
And then the
they
other
really try.
one is disgustingly
Right.
not moderated.
Right.
I mean, really, really bad.
Yeah, and so I just ask when you come in and join the page, we try to be respectful. We're all parents. I don't care what issue or topic you want to talk about, and I know that not everyone's going to agree, but I do just ask that people be respectful. Otherwise, pretty much everything flies in there.
Awesome. Anna, it's always great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm hoping I'll see you in July, and I hope you have a great...
If it's not 130 by then.
Well, it's only 115 today.
Only.
So I'm hoping to see you in July. Keep up the good work. Keep us posted. Guys, look up Empowering CCSD Parents, and also there'll be links on the Johnny Brew Show and stuff like that. So once again, I just want to say thanks again, and have a wonderful 4th of July.
Thank you, and happy Father's Day.
Juneteenth.
Yes, Juneteenth, and
happy
a wonderful
Father's Day to your
Thank you.
wonderful man who's patiently waiting to go to the pool.
To the pool.
Put those beers on ice.
He doesn't drink beer.
All right, this section of the program was brought to you by Empowering CCSD Parents, brought to you by Spilling the CCSD with Anna Marie Binder, and brought to you by Infinity the Math Institute, where you don't get more math problems, you get solutions. You do notice that Anna's talking about changes to curriculum in science, in history, in English. They're not changing the curriculum for math because math never changes.
Actually, it's history, art, and music.
They all change except for math. We're still learning the same math we learned 2,500 years ago. Thank you, Euclid. All right? My name is John Brookhagen. You're watching the Johnny Brew Show. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for the next part where we'll be talking about everything that affects your life.